Salutations. I've decided to finally go ahead and attempt to create a blog or a vlog or a podcast. This is what many people have asked me to do since around 2007. And I finally decided to acquiesce and do it. But before we begin, the most important thing um, um, that we have to do is define words. Definitions are very important. It is how we are, as people, indoctrinated to have certain beliefs. The word indoctrination itself, some look at as a pejorative, um, when it doesn't really have to be. In the context of uh, the word, it can be training or instruction or persuasion. Um, sure, it can be a pejorative, the process of teaching a person or a group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. Right, that would be the pejorative meaning. Um, the more benign meaning is just training. For example, in law enforcement and national security, I was trained when I had a weapon and I took the weapon out, never to put my finger on the trigger unless I was made up my mind to actually shoot. And that indoctrination was instilled by severe penalties because it's initially when you learn to shoot, it's habit to put your finger on the trigger. So they indoctrinated you by repeating it over and over and having it punish you in the event that you did it. You had to do 50 push-ups and it would graduate to 100 and eventually to termination if you just couldn't get that. So we are indoctrinated to have certain beliefs that upon examination, upon critical thinking, investigation, are just not true. And a lot of this indoctrination actually aids in the oppression of the masses. And I'm going to illustrate how. Recently, one of my colleagues um, asked my opinion on whether he should buy a treasury or a bond, a U.S. treasury, U.S. bond, because they're now paying about 5% um, interest. And so this is how I answered his question. I said to him, or I asked him, uh, what are you how much do you want to buy? How much do you want to loan the government? A lot of people don't know what a bond is. It's actually you loaning money to the government. And so he said about 10,000. So let's put that $10,000 in there. Okay. And we got the 5% yield or interest. And he said he wanted to keep it there about, let's say, 10 years. Okay. Um, Tax rate. Well, your tax rate, you have to pay federal tax on bonds. You don't have to pay state tax unless you get municipal bonds. Municipal bonds, there are no state or local taxes. There might be federal taxes. There might be state taxes on your um, your um, your treasury or your bond, your federal bond. So let's just do 20% tax rate because it's going to vary from your state to state. Now, what's the inflation rate? Now, this is where definition becomes important. Why? What is inflation? Most people don't know what inflation is. Most people believe inflation is rising prices. That is not inflation. Rising prices is not inflation. Now, they, who I mean by they, I'm talking about government institutions, have over time changed the definition of inflation. Most people believe, again, that inflation is rising prices. That is akin to saying that you have a cold when you're coughing and sneezing and having a runny nose or a fever. That's not the cold. The cold was the virus that invaded your body 3 to 5 days beforehand. What you're experiencing with a cough or sneezing, runny nose, and chills are the symptoms of the cold. Well, that's when you see prices rise. That's the symptom of inflation. So, what is inflation? Inflation is the expansion of the money supply. And let me show you what I mean. I downloaded a few definitions here. Okay, here we go. Now, there was an article written, and by the way, I actually have backed up 90% of what I read, and in an app called Diigo, Diigo. So if I say something, most of the time I have evidence of what I'm saying. And so here it is, back in 2011, there's an article, and I saved it from 2011, written describing how inflation has changed, over the years. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link a Google Drive file called definitions, because as I go through these various topics over time, definitions are important. You can read them later, or you can research them yourself. Right. So here's a Wall Street Journal article detailing the history of the definition of inflation. And there's a Federal Reserve paper written on the origin and evolution of the word inflation. And again, that's very important to what I'm going to describe to you. That impacts your life more than anything else in the world. It impacts every aspiration you have, every wish and desire you have for your children, your husband, your wife, your business, is centered around this word, okay? And the definition of this word, which is the expansion of the money supply, okay? And so let me show you what I mean. Where did I put it? Here we go. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Now, the money supply is measured from M0 to M8 or M9, I believe. And the Federal Reserve defines it. And this is the definition of what most people use is M2 or M3, when they call the money supply, right? And so the expansion of the money supply, quote, money supply growth and inflation are inextricably linked. No, they're one and the same. They're not inextricably linked. I'll have this article linked in the description as well, so you can read it later. Okay, let's get back to this right here. Okay, so let's say he wanted to invest $10,000 at the interest rate of 5% for 10 years. And let's say his tax rate is 28%. And we're going to use the inflation rate of 7.12%. Why? When the CPI is at 6.5% and the PCE is at 5.3 or 5.5%. Well, because those two metrics deliberately understate inflation. Now, some people believe the government has a malign reason for understating it, and some people believe that the government has benign reasons for understating. I'm in the former camp. And so where did I get 7.12% from? Well, let me show you here. Okay, I'm going to link this article as well. And what does it say? U.S. M2 money supply year over year is, for the first time in the history of this measurement, right, was down in January year over year 1.31%. And for the whole year, it was up 12.37%. Okay, again, what is the definition of inflation? The expansion of the money supply. The PCE is coming in at what, 6.5%? Right? And the long-term average is 7.12%. All right? This is going to become important when I go over the stock market pricing. People believe that over time, stocks go from left to right, always go up over 15, 20, 30-year period. And I'm going to show you how, in real terms, that's a fallacy. And I'm going to do the same for real estate. But first, let's go back to what this person asked me. All right, so $10,000 at 5% interest rate over a 10-year period, and his tax rate is 28%. We can lower it. Let's lower it because he's only going to pay state taxes on that. Let's lower it to 10%. Okay, let's calculate that out. Okay, so his ending balance, his nominal return over that 10 years of putting $10,000 in is $15,514.67, right? That's his nominal return. Now, what do I mean by nominal? Again, its definitions are important. I'm going to have nominal in the link, and the link is going to be a Google Drive link to definitions, right? Because there's going to be many words I'm going to use. I'm going to describe them. I'm going to define them here for you, and then link the definitions as well. So the nominal balance is $15,000. Okay, he gave $10,000. His total interest received over that time period is $6,127.41, and he paid $612 in tax. And so you'll think, oh, that's pretty good. He made $15,000. No, he did not. No, that's his nominal return. What's important when it comes to investing? The number one goal in investing is your real return. What the profit or interest or income you have in real terms. It's the value in real terms, not nominal. What does nominal mean? Let's substitute nominal with the word literal. Okay, you literally put $100 in the bank, and 10 years from now, you literally will get $100 back out from the bank. Right? That's nominal, literal. Right? But that's not the real value. The real value, because when let's say I put the money in the bank right now, it's I can buy $100 worth of stuff today. 10 years from now, will I be able to buy $100 worth of stuff with that $100? No. So what's the real value in 10 years? The real value is what you see there, the after inflation adjustment, $7,798.96, almost half. And why do we know that's true? Let's go somewhere else. I'm jumping ahead to something, but I want to show you this. Here it is. You're now losing 7% of your money to inflation per year, or 0.59% per month. At this rate, in 10 years, over 50% of your money has evaporated. Okay? So, when you lend your money to the government or to anyone, what's important is not the nominal return, but what is the real return. And a correlation of that is the interest rate a positive real rate or a negative real rate? And again, this is definitions I'm going to have to link to you, right? So a positive real rate, no, let me go negative. A negative real rate, let's use this example. The negative real rate is inflation is at 6.5% or 7%, but let's use the official CPI, 6.5%. And your interest rate is that you're getting off this bond is 5%. So what are you making? You're not making anything in real terms. You're losing 1.5% per year, compounded. Okay. And why is this important? Well, people, when they think about this inflation that we're dealing with right now, they chiefly compare it to the 70s, because that was a time of really high inflation, that started from the mid 60s to the early 80s. And but rarely do you ever see mention the 40s to the mid 50s. Okay. In fact, the latter part of the 40s to the mid 50s or late 50s, early 60s was a golden time in America, right? You don't think of rapid inflation during that period. But let me tell you how your government screwed over its citizens and continues to do so. I mean, this is, you can research this. This is literal. You've heard of the term war bonds. Well, if you haven't, war bonds was during the World War II. In order to finance the war, you had to convince the population, had to propagandize the population to loan the government money. Okay. The little bit of money that people had, remember now, we're just coming through the Great Depression. So what little bit of money people had, they were convinced to loan to the government, right? And the government promised to pay them X amount of interest, for a period of time. I think it was 30 years, or 20 years, or 10 years. I think most of those bonds were 30 years, though. So what happened? Well, I just showed you what happened. Those people got wiped out, but they never realized they got wiped out because they're looking at their nominal returns. They got wiped out like less than zero back. Think about it. They played upon your patriotism to give you to entice you to lend to the government, okay, to fight the Germans, okay, which America actually, a lot of American titans in industry and robber barons supported the Germans, but I don't mean to digress. I'm about to get to another area. So you were convinced to loan money to the government, and then they turned around and gave you something worthless for it, because in that 30-year period, in order to reduce the massive amount of debt that the government had, it was inflated away. Now, why was the period of the 40s different from the period of the 70s? Why do you hear a lot of negativity around the 70s inflationary period and nothing about the 40s inflationary period? Well, that was due to the fact that people were given things, like low-cost housing, subsidized housing, the VA bill. It wasn't given to black people, wasn't given to people that look like me, but, and so, you had jobs being created. And so wages rose at the rate or slightly below at the rate of inflation. So people weren't really feeling it, okay, because it was rising at the rate of inflation. Wages were rising at the rate of inflation. And they were also, given low cost housing and low cost farming and low cost, and they had jobs. So people didn't really have anything to complain about. Okay, which was much different from the 70s inflationary period. And it's absolutely going to be a whole lot different from this inflationary period. In any event, I'm going to stop this now. The next video I'm going to make is going to be in reference to stocks and then real estate. And I'm going to show you the same thing, how it's a fallacy that over time you can build wealth investing in the stock market. I'm going to show you that.